Namaste, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to all of you to the Blub World Web Talks 154th edition. A very warm welcome. And today we are going to talk about something that's really interesting, quite controversial, and I think path-breaking, because right now we're going to talk about an idea that found its genesis somewhere in 2008 when an anonymous research paper surfaced on the internet and the world was introduced to a form of currency which did not need governments, which did not need financial institutions, and the world accepted it. And they accepted it so well that right now the investment into that entity is in billions and billions of dollars. And it's going and growing and growing. And when we look at this ecosystem, there's a small, simple idea that actually came from one of the speakers today, that can a skill become a currency? And when we look at this as a skill, as a trait, as something that can be developed, can this be a currency? Talking from the context when we know that technology is replacing humans. And when technology is replacing humans, can we only transact in money? Because we now accept digital money as cryptocurrency. So a very warm welcome once again, everyone, to the Blub World Web Talks 154th edition. Today, let's talk about creativity as currency. Let me invite the first speaker for today to introduce the topic, to typically talk a little bit deeper about the idea of creativity and can it be really equated to currency in the future, not just with the arts, not just with the performing arts, and not just considering currency as satisfaction, taking it to a real physical money level that the world might transact in the future. A very warm welcome, Mr. Mike Knowles, Professor Emeritus School of Creativity from Rishi Hood University, Sonipat, Haryana. Mike, over to you on creativity as currency.
Thank you, Dash. Thank you very much indeed. Charming as ever. This is an interesting one. And to tell you how I got to this idea, I've been talking about creativity and the positivity and the importance of creativity for a very long time. When the university that I'm part of, Rishi Hood University, the new university, when the first college that we set up, the first part of it, the first school, was the School of Creativity, which it is, I suppose, basically a design school. So architecture, interior design, fashion, textiles, product design, etc. But what I've always found with students, and I've mentored a considerable amount of students over my years, until you actually pull out a young person's creativity, you rebuild their creativity that they were naturally born with, and forgive my negativity, but which education systems that we have developed has destroyed, and that's well documented now. That until we re-establish their creativity, they never get to the zenith of their abilities to come up with new ideas, new things. Now, the world of design, that's how you live. You know, you go on and go on, go on. But as I said, talking to people about this massive power, and there's far, far, far more important people than me, and then NASA research, which we've talked about often, about where the NASA invested millions and millions of dollars in understanding what creativity was, because creativity is the rocket fuel of NASA. And then making this, discovering this fact that the child of 5 is 98% creative, and a child of 18 is 12% creative because of the system. So, and then great minds like Sir Ken Robinson and many, many more that set up on this, sharing how valuable. In fact, look, if you look at what's just happened over the last 18 months, science, technology, genius, etc., has got us out of this. AI has played a massive part. Wonderful. But it's been managed by creative minds. So it wasn't pure science. It wasn't pure engineering or whatever that got us through this nonsense. It's creativity. And yet you talk to people about creativity, and then, oh yes, that's lovely, isn't it? Creativity. It's all like, you go into the fashion industry and design a frock and paint everything pink. So it's negated to that level. when it is the most important thing, the most important power and gift that we've been given. So in conversations with some very interesting people, much respected people, it came around to the fact, and of course now with cryptocurrencies, in the art world becoming very big, very, very big, it came around to this thing. So that if you want people to look at this and take it seriously, what's the one thing that actually truthfully, pricks up their ears? If you talk about values and integrity, and if you talk about, sort of all those altruistic things that so many of us build our lives on, a lot of people just couldn't care less about that. You talk about money and it suddenly becomes something else. And then, so then it linked into this thing, because cryptocurrencies, I mean, they're interesting. But why have we built our understanding of the wealth, or we've assessed the wealth of a country on banknotes? Became, the whole idea of banking, the world of the strange Medicis. Or we've built our currencies on the fact of from a glittery, shiny metal, ductile metal that we drag out of the earth called gold. Why are we building our standards on that when the real substance, the real value of human beings is their creativity? So why can we not say, listen, creativity is it. Every child is born massively creative. Every child is born rich. Yeah, every child, it's like you're born with a bank account or you're born with a stash of gold. No, you're born with your creativity. It's your creativity that will take you to the top. Why shouldn't creativity be seen as the true collateral of the value of a system, the value of a country, or etc.? Sorry if that wasn't terribly clear, but I'm doing my best.
Thank you so much, Mike. Let me try to summarize what you said. We are typically re-establishing creativity when we try to teach it, or when we want to make it a part of the education process, because every child already has that. And when we talk of technology and when we talk of creativity, our mental blocks or our prejudices make us think of careers in the space of art, typically fashion, typically anything that's related to designing, anything that's related to creating, drawing, writing. And we never consider that AI, technology, machine learning, blockchain, what all latest technologies we are using right now that are helping humans globally are also a product of someone's creativity who thought of using that into codes and lines of codes. And to make creativity a serious skill, it must be equated to money in some or the other way. If we look at human history, we all know that a lot of people have tried unifying the world. The first way of unification was through power, where they wanted to conquer everybody and make the world their territory. The second way of unification was religion or spirituality, where they wanted to bring it all together. And the most successful way of world unification that works even till date has been money. Then why not make every child a little more rich when we recognize creativity as money? So this is the idealistic or the idea part of it, the way we think of creativity as currency. Let's see what do the technical experts in the world think on, can creativity really be a currency? We have an amazing guest next with us who can share a lot of perspective on it from the view of somebody who has been in engineering, who has headed some of the best institutions in India based on engineering and logic. A very warm welcome, Professor Dr. Sandeep Sancheti, the Provost Vice Chancellor of Marwari University, Rajkot, the Member of Executive Council of Association of Commonwealth Universities, London. A very warm welcome, sir. Over to you to put your perspective on creativity as currency.
Thank you. Thank you, Dakshi. Thank you, Mr. Mike, for setting the tone. Very interesting topic, first of all, and I'd like to congratulate Blub World for taking this initiative to define something very, very fresh. Because while we like the word creativity, we possibly may not understand it as well as we should. That's the real difficulty. And particularly for young minds, if they want to make way ahead, I think they should be drowned in this kind of a scenario called creativity if really we want to progress. So your question is very apt. Can creativity be treated as a currency? Can it be a currency? So my answer to this specific point would be that currency is also now being seen in many, many forms. I must give you one easy example with which I've been involved and what I've been talking about for last 6 months to 1 year. And that is a scheme called ABC, Academic Bank of Credit. And when I introduced that scheme to the people in higher education, particularly the students, I tell them the credit will be the new currency of education. Thereby, I mean that you will not worry about degree, you will not worry about diploma or certification or anything. As long as you can prove that I have so many credits which I have earned from XYZ institution, this will be my currency, educational currency, you can call it. So you obviously understand what I'm trying to say here. Currencies can be of many, many forms. And obviously, creativity in times to come would be the most important, because creativity goes to the very top end of what we do generally. You probably also know that gold was a currency, it was being traded, silver was there. We obviously learned a lot about oil being currency. People who had oil became rich and they got the currency, so and so. And now we say data is the new oil, or else you can say data is the new currency. So all that is there. But see, data is the starting point for many things in our life today. Data goes to information in some sort of a refined form. Information goes to what we call the knowledge in some sort of a refined form. Again, you take the further action and it goes to wisdom. Knowledge goes to wisdom when you can foresee and various other things which you can do. And wisdom alone is not sufficient. Then you'll have to see the relevance of that particular wisdom and knowledge, that how relevant it is. And once you see that, then you go further, that is that relevance making an impact or not. And all these later steps, which I've told you, wisdom to relevance to impact, I think the creativity is really core. Without that, nothing would happen. And therefore, you can always say, if data can be treated as currency, then anything as a byproduct or higher product of the data will always be treated as currency, and creativity falls into that. You should also know some of the examples which I know. Like I gave you the example of today, degree will not be a currency, credit will be the currency. Similarly, you yourself were giving an example of knowledge. That can knowledge be the currency? I doubt. Knowledge by itself, unless you have the skill, you cannot apply it. And therefore, once you have the skill, the creativity comes into the picture. So it has to be combined with the skill, and then it becomes the creativity. How to apply knowledge, where to apply knowledge, when to apply knowledge, that comes. Similarly, I may have a good knowledge of theory, and unless I make an application of it, so once again, the creativity comes in applying it. Similarly, other things which I have told you. So you can say that there will be many, many forms of the currency which will be there. And this creativity has a very, very loose or open-ended definition, in my opinion. One, creativity could be not necessarily limited to a painting or a drawing or a piece of art, which obviously is where people start understanding it. But technology is also an art. I'm a microwave or high frequency electronics engineer, and I know that how much of art is involved in designing things there. And therefore, the creativity comes to the fore when you want to do even those things. So creativity for me would be unconventional way of thinking. It may be something to do with the original ideas, methods, or objects which may be there. Creativity obviously is imaginative or solution oriented. Some people will call it out of box thinking, or maybe suited to a given situation. Some other attributes, there are limitless attributes to creativity. It is maybe spontaneity in some sense, or attention to details. It can be uncluttered mind. It can be controlled or some sort of a thinking in a certain direction. So that's also, all these things lead to this thing. So all the new things are, creativity is the seed for that. And last point I'd like to make before coming back again later, we talk about inventions and innovations. I generally will say that the two are very, very different. Generally, inventions are either for quest of knowledge or incidental, whereas innovations are for purpose. And there is a huge line of difference between the two. And one of them could be that one is purely scientific and another one is not. One is very driven by commercial things and one is not driven by commercial things. I don't think so Newton ever started thinking that why Apple is falling down. Was there any commercial angle? It wasn't. But fortunately, if you have to see the combined element of innovation and invention, creativity is the right seed for breeding both of them. And therefore, creativity will remain to be a currency. Whether the measures will be effective or not is immaterial to me, but creative will be traded, will be bought, and will be nurtured, and will be given its value also. So that's my view, initial view.
Thank you so much, Sandeep sir. And I think you added the right kind of element into the whole discussion where you added the technical aspect of it. Let me try to put together some of the important points that you told. Most importantly, currency has now, been redefined in many ways. A lot of ideas, a lot of perspectives have been added to it. The meaning of it has changed. You started with, equating the credits that we get, the marks that we get in the education system, now being considered a form of currency in the education space, at least, where you yourself are right now consulting the government of India to build the academic board of credit. So once you have those credits, it's kind of a money bag that you're creating in the education space that you'll carry throughout your life. It's not dependent on a degree that you'll be building. Data can be considered a new currency, is being considered currency when we put data miners onto it. And when these same data miners or Bitcoin miners work on complex mathematical equations and solve them, that's where, again, a new form of currency of cryptocurrency is found and traded globally. Knowledge to wisdom, wisdom to relevance, and relevance to finally impact. So this complete journey of a piece of information, a piece of data, from a small little blip on the screen to a big real on-ground impact is a journey that always has creativity alongside in the complete process of it. But most importantly, the perception of creativity is not that creative enough. Because at the moment, people only understand it with arts. They only understand it with colors, with sketches, with lines and drawings. That's where we need to put in a lot of effort to change that. So most importantly, when you moved ahead, you talked about technology being also a form of art, because when you are developing programs, when you're developing some new form of solution, you always need that. You also, put forth some of the points, some of the elements, some of the adjectives that would rather define creativity much better: spontaneity, uncluttered minds. And I think where you concluded your talk is where the essence of the next portion of the discussion really lies. That's innovation and invention, where there's no commercial aspect to inventions, which we cannot say in a very solid vacuum tight way. But yes, inventions are incidental and innovations are always done with a core purpose of some commercial outcome at the end of it. And can we really say that Newton's idea of gravity was a startup idea? So that's the real question, and the kind of paradox that we're building. That is ideation commercializable? Can you actually equate it to money? Can you really think of something? Can creativity be traded? Would it have a value of its own? Can it be considered wealth? So let's try to have thoughts from Mike on what does he think, that what will be the elements in creativity that could really make it a currency so that it becomes tradable, so that people can exchange it and people value it as much as they value the material that we dig out and keep digging out and build the Fort Knoxes of the world. So let's talk to Mike, that will creativity be some form of gold? Over to Mike.
Professor Dr. Sanchetti, that was brilliant. Absolutely. If I may be so bold, I don't spare blushes. You hit it. You got it absolutely spot on. That's your academic and your engineering mind coming together. It's beautiful. But one thing, the whole thing that we've got to do with this, with all this, with respect, we've got to keep absolutely solidly in our mind the word simplicity. This cannot be complicated. If we complicate it, because we are talking about bigger issues, we are talking about a planet that's just about to fall apart. So we really have got some serious things to do now. And the more complicated we make our way forward, the more problematic it comes down to. So you see, the whole thing, knowledge, the difference between knowledge and wisdom, that massive quantum leap, because knowledge is what AI will have plenty of, stacks of it. Trillions and gillions and whatever you want to call it, of megabytes of data that it can play with and work with and assimilate in nanoseconds. We can't do that. We have to admit it, we cannot do that. We cannot dance the same dance that it does. But it's got knowledge. It does not have wisdom. And that wisdom comes from the creative mind that takes the knowledge and turns it into something else, that takes it beyond. I don't think we can get into the whole thing about values and aesthetics and all sorts of things here. But it's if we're going to use this fantastic opportunity, not waste this fantastic opportunity of AI, augmented intelligence, yeah, then we have got to recognize the fact, like NASA did when they did that study, like Professor Mikhail Kakul, robots are not creative. And the one thing that they need from us more than anything is creativity. And that creativity can come from a child in a poor village in Gujarat, as well as it can come from a Harvard University lecturer or whatever. We all have that inside us. And that's why it then becomes the currency. It's the currency that we can give, that understanding, that knowledge, that spark that takes facts and turns it into magic. And that's what we need to do. And as I say, it was a very interesting coming to this. I'm certainly not an economist, and I don't like to think that I'm money-minded. But if it's the only way that we're going to get this over to people, yeah, that this is what we are. This is how we will continue to survive as humans, by taking far more advantage of our creativity. Even now, for instance, where I am in London, and our government has turned around recently and talking about education, because they're now saying that science has cured the pandemic, or is curing the pandemic. There's an element of truth to that. But they've already, because of their saying that, they have now turned their back on the creative education. So what we had all hoped for, that the arts or whatever, which defined as the creative, was going to take its place, it'd be very important. No, nations are now saying, no, you don't need that now. We all need to be scientists. We all need to be engineers. We all need to be this thing. And that isn't what it is. Yeah, we need to be creative scientists. We need to be creative engineers, creative doctors, creative economists. But our creativity leads the way, and hopefully that creativity, and if we can get it back into its right place, which is aligned with our human morality, so that we do things not purely and simply for the sake of mammon, but we do things philosophically and meaningfully, then we have changed the whole thing.
Creativity with the aspect of implementation, or rather as a skill in all forms of professions, in all sort of everything that we do in life. I think we need to discuss one more element of creativity at this moment itself, because we are not talk about creativity as currency. I think a small little trajectory has already been made, and I think Sandeep ji is working on a very, what we can say, sweet spot in this, that you have converted. Right now, degree was something that could be commercialized into money. Now we have converted those credits into that could, in the future become typical money. So how would you think that what would be the next steps that should be taken, or should, or rather I would, rephrase myself, what would be the next steps that we should start thinking on, so that creativity finally finds some equation to gold? Over to Sandeep ji.
Okay. Actually, very nice question. I would not necessarily be pushing for making something as a currency. For the simple reason, the moment you make it as a currency, it has a limited life. every form of currency which you have seen from ages, and certainly in our times also, things have changed, whether it is plastic or oil or paper or just barter system, doesn't matter. The currency forms and factors have changed. So I would retain my creativity as creativity. Let creativity be the driver for any currency, whatever it may be. Creativity cannot be measured, as I was trying to indicate, very easily. Creativity is creativity. It's intangible kind of a thing, if you can say. And therefore, let's not necessarily say it as a directly as a currency, but indirectly it is the driver for all the currency. Today, if someone comes to my boutique or someone comes to my restaurant, possibly they know that Sandeep Sancheti runs a beautiful restaurant where dishes will be something very unique or the clothing will be very unique to me. And that's nothing but creativity. All right. So I would not really worry about whether it goes into currency or not. So let's see the scenarios where the creativity comes into picture. The first scenario for me, the creativity where it comes is where my things are not working. I start doing jugaad and all sorts of thinking. Jugaad is also a creativity. Professor knows in Hindi we use it, and it's very popular in northern part of India. So when something doesn't work, I do. So for example, a big attribute which current generation of students require is problem solving. Problem solving is indirectly creativity. It's not just deriving something and then doing some calculation. Problem solving is how this thing is going to work. Situation-based solutions. Making new hypotheses and then say, I'm going to attempt it and I'm going to make it work. That's going to be creativity. I give you an example. So many examples would come to us on the WhatsApp that I mean, I keep trying to keep storing them, but then once again, you cannot do so much. A lot of corn peeling happens in India because of storage, supply, and then processing and powdering and whatever those things. A year and a half back, I saw one guy with a very low-speed motorcycle vehicle on a stand is able to just put the corns right at the back wheel of the motorcycle, and the corns are peeling very, very nicely. No cost, no equipment, no hardly any energy, hardly any risk in that. And this is a innovation or this is a creativity. So when some things don't work for you nicely, you bring creativity. Similarly, when you want to reduce the cost and time, once again, the creativity comes into picture, that how to make the efficiency more, how to do it with a little bit of more ease, how to do it with a higher speed and all that. That's another driver of the creativity. So creativity should have one driver called, there should not be a what do you call the status quo kind of an attitude in the society, in the people's mind and all that. And the change should be something, and change would be related to creativity, as we know. And people wanting change is the biggest thing for the creativity. I already gave you that example. Every time I eat in one restaurant, second time I eat it, and third time I'll say, no, I'm not going to that restaurant. I ate only last month there. Same thing in the last marriage, I put on this dress and I want a different dress this time. That's creativity. Same thing these days are happening with vehicles, houses, furniture, and also maybe tourist spots and all that. So the point I'm trying to tell you is creativity will be at the back end. You know, in the current this thing, there is a front end and there is a back end to every technology and every function. UI, UX, and all those features, you probably understand it very well. So creativity will be the driver of the currency, not necessarily a direct currency by itself, and that's why it is going to live long. Currencies may die, but the creativity will not. That's my view.
So we should not rather be aspiring to equate creativity with gold, because you might, decrease the lifespan of creativity itself. Let it remain in the back end. Let's consider this a part of wisdom, as a part of problem solving, as a part of critical thinking, then rather bringing it to the forefront, equating it to money, and rather ending its life a little too early. So at this point, what we all know, that creativity in some way drives innovation, drives businesses, drives economies. So should creativity not be a part of education more actively, rather than just being one more topic that's kind of a co-curricular activity everywhere and could not find its true space in the curricular arena in the education space? Mike, your views on should it be more actively involved in the education space? And if it gets involved or if it's recognized in that manner, what should actually be that element in creativity that we should be teaching, educating, or propagating to the students?
Thanks, Dax. You have a remarkable way of building logic into a way of doing things. No, because as I'm thinking, you've already asked the question. It's very important. So let me try for once to be simple myself. Right. A survey that was carried out by Dr. George Land for NASA showed that kids of 5, 98% creativity, young people of 12, 30% creativity, and young people of 16 to 18, 12% creativity. The average human being, 2% creativity. A serious, very expensive study, yeah, and supported by many people. That means that, and we have to take as a premise that creativity, yeah, and I agree totally. I could with Sandeep that turning it into a currency per se cheapens it. So we don't want to go there, but we have to elevate the importance of it. So we've now got all the rote stuff, all the knowledge stuff being done by AI magnificently. And now we need, but the thing they cannot do is the creativity, so they need creative minds. We have found ourselves in the situation over the years where we've been stripping away since the Industrial Revolution, first Industrial Revolution, we've been stripping away young people's creativity because we wanted them to become soldiers so that we could colonize. We wanted them to become coal miners so that we could build energy plants. Okay, it's all that kind of selfish stuff that's going on. So what we now need to do is to take that child and a chart that I worked on, which I'll share with it if anybody wants it at some stage, showing what happens to a child's creativity. What I've looked at is if you catch a child at the age of 8, so from 5, the creativity comes to plummets. Catch them at 8, where it's come down to about 60%. And then you start to relayer. And this is the education thing. You start to give them or help them earn creative credits. And this is the credit system. And thank you very much, Sandeep, about this thing with the university thing. It's so evolved, it's not funny. And then what I've done over the years is I've worked on the things that bring back a child's creativity. And they're very simple. There's 6 points. You take ways of seeing, and I do this with students. I've done this with students from the age of 5 or 6 up to students of the age of 50 and 60. Ways of seeing. How do we do things? This is not rocket science. How do we get people to look properly, like they, see things that we've got the art to do? Understanding spatial awareness, our place on the earth, our place in the planet. Yeah, I won't go in depth in this, but I'd love to do it at some stage. Empathy, the key point. We talk about design thinking, critical thinking. 3 points: an empathetic understanding of a problem, creativity that solves the problem, and then when you've found the solutions, you use the power of process to put those problems in place so you actually solve it. So empathy, reasoning process, aesthetics is vital and valuable. Ethics, of course, and that's one thing where if we'd put ethics in as with youngsters much earlier, instead of taking it away like we did, perhaps the planet wouldn't be just about to burn up. But by introducing those things to young people, they gain creative credits, and they go from their 60% of creative power at the age of 8 to by the time they're 12 or 14, they're back up to 98. And if they're good Indian kids, 101%, because 100% is never enough. But it works. So that's got to be I believe, set up into the education system. It really has to be. Creative credits.
Creative credits to be a part of the education system, ways of seeing, special awareness, empathy, design thinking, solutions to processes. A very interesting observation, or rather a question that had come in the earlier talk that we did on the same topic, is whenever we look at creativity, that is something that happens in small spaces. Innovation that happens in small sizes, that happens in prototyping. We are able to do more stuff when we are slim. When we talk of startups, we want it to be a lean startup. So should we be thinking that scale is the enemy of creativity? Over to Sandeep ji to answer this question, that scaling anything, is it always being an enemy of creativity?
I'll come to this part a little later, if you permit me, Daksh. Remind me of this question, scaling. But since you are asking about the creativity in the academic world, I have very definitive views on that, and therefore I'd like to share. Number one, I'm making this statement in the context of India. Generally, exceptions will always be there here and there. We actually try to kill the creativity of our students in the early ages, whether we are at home or whether we are elsewhere in public or certainly in schools where the discipline or the fear of discipline is very, very high. They hardly would explore or do anything which they naturally want to do, and that's the place where the creativity is getting killed, in my opinion. And therefore, one fundamental change which is required, the classroom activities should primarily be focused on Q&A, which are more towards why, when, what, how, where kind of things. And therefore, their quest for knowledge, quest for being different, quest for understanding it in a certain context is available, is satisfied. And that's where you can say that the creativity will be nurtured in the academic world. When you come to the higher side, and you know that you must be a parent and I'm a parent, how many times we reprimand our kids on doing something small in our house, and particularly when guests are there, the poor guys cannot play around, cannot do something which they like. So we actually cut it right from the root. But when it comes to higher education, I would say that allowing me to learn what I want to learn compared to you teach me what I want to teach you, I think that philosophy should be changed. Teachers do teach what they want to teach, remove it. Let the learners learn what they want to learn. Creativity will get booster dose, will get spread, will get amplified, will get different dimensions. And in that case, they can make the courses of their choice advanced or slow or fast or whatever diverse. They can make degrees of their choices. They can make the specializations of their choices. For example, my creativity will be best. Suppose after my graduation, I have to do my business. So I should know something about finance, something about management. But let's say my business is of chemical or a biotechnology related startup, or my father is doing, then I should know something about that. So all these things I can mix, and then only my creativity will be best if I know some of the ingredients which will drive what I want to drive. So that's my answer to the academic side of it. Now, the second one you asked is the scaling part. I'm sorry, I don't know about your background, but I'm quite infamous for making a statement. And that is being a technical person, I know how modeling happens and how the parameterization of certain things happen. And I've done it myself extensively. And I say that most of the world is non-linear. That means for a given input, the output will not follow the standard relation all the time. And there the aspect of scaling comes into picture. Okay, even the best of the simplest of the things in engineering, if I say Ohm's law, resistance, voltage, current, that's also highly non-linear, whereas people understand it as a linear. The point I'm trying to tell you is most of the world's problems origin is in the non-linearity of operations. More so in India, we make beautiful schemes. We coin beautiful things from our chest or currency chest or whatever, and think that this will survive and this will be the final thing. All over the world, it can be applied very easily, but it fails in India. The reason is only scaling. The scaling basically means that diversity of operating condition. You think voltage is this, the voltage is changing because of ripples. You think something is this, but the temperature is changing the current. Once the current and voltage changes, the material changes the property, so something more changes. So the same thing happens here, that whatever we may do, political, social, cultural, religious, and various other aspects which you can possibly say the financial and well-being and all that, and those angles comes into picture, and they all pull you in a certain direction, and therefore the creativity is also getting pulled in those directions, and therefore creativity is also impacted by the non-linearities in a very, very high way. I can give you my own example. I must have at least 50 ideas still sitting with me in my list of things to do, which I want to do, and I presume those will be more creative in nature. But I have not been able to do it for last 5-10 years because I'm pulled in other things which I'm supposed to do and give priority. So yes, everything in life gets affected by the scale. Creativity more easily because it's not necessarily measurable or things of that particular nature. But I'm sure world will improve. All of us will learn. Your efforts in this direction will educate the young minds to be different compared to what we are. And I'm sure creativity will be a big driver in future.
Two portions to the complete verdict. I think the first academic verdict is quite detailed and quite related to what currently is going on with the India perspective, and not just India. I would rather generalize it globally, because everywhere we are building corporations, we are building organizations that are very big in size. They have to operate in diversity of situations, and just for scaling up, most of the times the creativity element of it, the differentiator element of it, or anything that's different is rooted out. And that's where our education simply becomes a training program rather than a real education program. And that's where we move a little bit away from building wisdom. We just stick to training people to do a certain specific set of tasks. And the second part of it, where you talked about scalability, the normal people understand it with a very simple perspective, that it's repeating something. If you find a solution, you keep repeating it. And if it's successful and it's able to perform in diversified, varied situations, then you're on the sweet spot and you've scaled up. But a very important point that you brought into the discussion, that the complete process of working, operations, organizational behavior, building something, scaling up is not linear, and the responses change. So I think some way, even scalability in its intrinsic manner is also a little bit creative, but right now we don't know how to utilize that or let everybody involved in the process to be a little more creative. Mike, your thoughts on, can scaling be considered creative? Can there be made some space where we can think of scaling up while keeping in mind that the people involved in the process still remain creative and their creative inputs could get involved in the process? Over to Mike.
No, ideally, I mean, Sandeep is 100% right. The scaling, and this would be, we've spent decades or centuries stripping away people's creativity. It would be nice to spend decades putting it back again. But the simple truth is we don't have the time. We actually don't. It's not the scale of whatever, it's the scale of the current situation. There was a very poignant cartoon in the Times a couple of days back, and it showed that it was 8 globes, and the first one was the globe that we've all lived with the that awful sort of the COVID sort of thing with suckers and things like that, red screaming horrible thing that an image we all hate. But then it started to pan into images of the globe itself and the Earth, and then the last image, the 8th image, was a ball of red hot Earth, which looks so much like the COVID whatever that you can't believe. And so it is my very, very, very firm belief that if we don't start getting this right now, and in big ways, we're going to lose it. We are going to lose it. Now, I'm 70, so 70 years and 10. So really, okay, sort of whatever. But my children are not 70. My grandchildren are not 70. Their children's children. If we really care about what's going to happen on the planet. We are not in a position to be remotely complacent about this. It's not going to go away. It's there. What we do have is a power in AI that can actually speed up the process, the healing process. But without thousands and thousands and millions of people, young people, approaching, taking this on board. I mean, the classic here in the UK. So people are dying, yeah, my generation and whatever else, all that kind of bits and pieces and things like that. And suddenly, and then the vaccine comes out, and the vaccine is proven to actually be very, very positive, not 100%, but positive. What we're finding here now in the UK is that young people are not going up for their jabs. They don't, because they don't actually need it. It's not going to kill them, so they don't do it. That means we've stripped away from that generation that sense of responsibility that would come from a creative mind, the creative mind that would see the bigger picture. We have got to get it back into place as quickly as possible. And one of my excitements about India, and as you know, I spent the last 20 years in India. My wife is from Delhi. My younger kids grew up there. I know we've had our problems in India, but we also have a certain magic. We genuinely do. 3,500 years ago, the best liberal arts universities ever. That beautiful way of thinking. When Sandeep mentions Jugaad is special. Jugaad is superb. Jugaad is humanly creative, yeah, and it's not arrogant. It comes from the earth and the soul and the spirit. India has a real opportunity to be the country that leads in all these things. I'm not being nice or whatever else. I'm not just being whatever. I believe that. But I think that within the Indian DNA, within the Indian psyche, so there in India, there is this opportunity to make this massive change. I also believe, sadly, that the West has lost it. But that's what happens to empires, doesn't it? Empires come, and empires go. And so what we have known as the world empire for the last, I don't know, God knows how many, 250 years or whatever, it's on its way out. But something else has got to come in, not necessarily an empire, but certainly a new way of doing things. So we have a great opportunity in India. We have a massive opportunity, but we have to get it in place. We have to get this creativity thing into education in a big way.
We actually used a lot of decades to, take out or root out all forms of creativity, but we do not have that much of time to reinforce it or put it back again into the system. And you talk of India, and I think you again reinforced the statement, Sandeep, you already made, that India is absolutely non-linear. And that's where the opportunity has really come up, because there is space for Jugaad still there in India, and there's space for innovation. Now, before this talk comes to an end, because we are nearly at the end of it, a small last question from both of you. It's kind of a Bhavishwani sort of a question. I wanted you to do some sort of a future telling for all of us. So one of the historians wrote a very famous book right now that's being read by a lot of people globally, Homo Sapiens. He, in his latest TED talk, did a kind of a future telling or a crystal gazing. He said that the world in our history has always been divided in 2 or 3 forms of classes. One class is the premier people, and the other class is the big population chunk. From different times, it started with kings and peasants. Then it was the kings and the citizens. It was slaves being the big class. And right now, the middle class is the biggest class globally. And his Bhavishwani or future telling is a simple statement that by the year 2030, the biggest class of these humans is going to be the useless humans. What will we be doing with this biggest class of humans that we won't know how to put them to use for this globe, because all other tasks will be taken care by technology? Sandeep ji, your future telling or crystal gazing on this statement, and what do you think is going to happen? Not drawing a gloomy world, but just kind of a path ahead.
No, I'm not necessarily. I'm always on the positive side. I'm always a optimistic person. Tell me who in this world doesn't want to paid more for less work? I think most of us fall into that category. Exceptions are there everywhere. So there is no question of if technology is going to reduce my work, I'm not worried. I'll be very happy riding on that slave or that donkey called technology if it is so. I'm happy. The only thing is, it should make my life more satisfying to me. What will be those parameters? I don't know. But given an opportunity, I will say, okay, if someone is giving me sensible money to do less work, I'm happy. So I'm not crazy about work. And if technology is reducing the work, let it be. I think we are using technology for comfort of ours everywhere, whether it is my kitchen or my mobile or my automobile, everywhere I use it for comfort only. And the comfort levels are increasing, let it be. And therefore, once these things come, as we already said, non-linearities will come. And non-linearities, as I already answered to you, I said creativity comes because of three major things. Some things don't work. Now, those things don't work because it's a non-linear operation. Then another answer I gave you was you want to reduce the cost, time, and increase the efficiency and speed. Once again, these are parameters of non-linearity of operation only. And the third thing I said to you, creativity comes because of the people want change. And that's also non-linear. If everyone wears the same dress, same t-shirt, or same jacket, and probably same clothes, which we used to do in our childhood in a big family, we'll get one big piece of cloth and there'll be 10 pants and 5 other things made out of that. Now, today, no one wants that. People want change. And therefore, the creativity is coming. So in a way, I must answer this question like this. Is there a good without bad? Is there a white without black? Is there a right without wrong? I will leave these philosophical questions to you or to anyone to judge. But let me give you a technological answer to this. You know that we are connected through a signal right now, which is called electronic signal. Now, my question to you to ponder over, or anyone can answer, including Mike, if he would like to do so later, can there be a signal without noise? Now, these are technical things. Signals and noise go hand in hand. When we detect something as a signal, we reduce the noise or avoid the noise or eliminate the noise or filter the noise. My question to you is, can there be a signal without noise? My answer is already no. And therefore, they will coexist. Let's not worry about, but remember, if I again use my electronics as a fundamental, the ripple of change cannot be stable. Otherwise, if it is stable, it cannot be rippled. So it moves in a device, it moves in a system, it moves in a country, it moves in a universe. These changes will happen. I think our emergency is also owed to some changes, and our disappearance will also be because of these kind of changes. And therefore, let's not try to live in a static world, but let's make it as happy as possible within our control. That's the take I would have on this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sandeep ji. And yes, the ripples of change would not be stable, and the signal will always have the noise that we'll have to filter out. So there could these are the two sides of the coin that we cannot separate. Mike, your closing thoughts on the statement that by 2030, the biggest class of humans that we'll have on the globe will be the useless ones.
But the thing that our creativity would lead us to do, if we put our creativity first, a creative person finds solutions. A creative person is a critical thinker. That's the key thing. That's what I do with all my students. It's the first thing I want them to do. The first way you get them to be critical thinkers and changers is that you help them. The minute a youngster has designed a chair, made a pot, done a beautiful painting, whatever else, and people have said, wow, that's really good, bang, child changes. Child changes on that very moment because they see the value of their creativity. What AI will do, I sincerely hope, is that it will it's already freed up so much. Look, I'm talking to you guys from London. I've been all over the world in the last 18 months while I'm sitting at my desk. That's an amazing freedom. Well, given that freedom to a creative mind, then the creative mind will say, I don't want to sit here and vegetate. I want to use this time for something. I mean, a classic is textiles. AI, robotics, is going to devastate the textile industry. For India, that's bad news and tragic news. I mean, we saw what happened with Khadi and how it went from 5 million workers down to 1 million workers. And each worker supports 5, 7, 8 people. An absolute tragedy. The reason that happened was because the changes that came in technology that produced different things or whatever, that nobody thought, well, now, okay, I've got this time to think about this other thing. How do I change this? So in textiles, as the demand goes on, well, hopefully, there's a very big movement that really is going somewhere now in terms of the fact about throwaway, materials and things like that. Then you use your creative mind to find other things to do. What do we do with technology? What do we do with textiles? People are talking about clean textiles. They're talking about they're talking about structured textiles. They're talking about all sorts of things. And so that logic comes in. I mean, thinking about the things, if you bought if you bought 10 t-shirts for $100 and they are finished in 2 years, but you bought one t-shirt for $1,000 that will last you longer, and you paid the person, you put more money into it, and you pay the person who's producing that t-shirt 10 times the amount, what's the actual difference? What's the difference? Apart from the fact that you're elevating that person's. So creativity will find the solutions. Creativity will work its way through it. But at the moment, still, we're just not taking any notice of it. We're dumbing it down. I've come up with a game, working with a company that does animations and games and things like that. And it's actually on earning creative credits. So a child goes home in the evening, and instead of turning on, Mad Killer Max, whatever it is, where there's just everything, there's some evil games out there and all sorts of stuff. They turn on a game where they earn creative credits, and that creative credits actually can lead them into getting a place in a university and a reserve place in a university. Let's just get it in place. Let's go back to the humans that we are, and get things back into this. Let's get our creativity back as our primary source for genius.
Thank you so much, Mike. And I think in the textile industry, we all know one thing. It was an obsession for uniformity, and now it's an obsession for differentiation. We want to all wear things that are different, that are in different colors. So I think in that industry, at least, life has come full cycle. We want things that are unique. We want things that are not repeated, and we want things that are not scaled up a lot. So today, in the last 30 to 40 minutes that we had with our amazing speakers, we tried to build an opinion, or rather build your opinion and your perspective on, can creativity be a currency of the future? Now, before this talk comes to an end, we won't let this end just on this conversation. We want to end this with a simple question. When we all believe that creativity holds all the chords for the future, should economies across the globe be scaled, be tested, be ranked on the basis of creativity? Thank you so much, everybody, for being a part of the Blub World Web Talks 154th episode. I hope you enjoyed. If you enjoyed and if you want to attend the future sessions, you can open your audio, say a big yes, and thank you so much, everyone. And thank you so much to our amazing guests for being a part of the Blub World Web Talks. Thank you, people. Namaste.
Thank you.
Big yes.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Lovely meeting you.